Thank you, Ken. Good morning, everybody, and you're welcome. It's great to be back. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces. I wasn't going to say all faces, but I don't want to offend most of you. First of all, let me wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. We're a week early, as you know, because Thanksgiving is next week, so thanks everybody for turning up a week earlier. I'd also like to send along a thank you to Jerry Sweeney, who very competently took over my role while I was out of the country for 5 months. So thanks very much, Jerry. I appreciate your help. So let's get down to introducing our guest speaker. He needs lots of time, he tells me, and that's Mr. Lew Jennings, or as he was known in his previous life, Major Jennings of the U.S. Army. When I first met Lew, he related his life story to me, and I said to him, Lew, there's so much here, you can't do that in one setting. I said, we're going to have to do 2 series. So this is the second of the first one. He came here in April early this year, and he spoke about his days in Vietnam as a helicopter gunship pilot. But today you're going to hear part 2 of his life, which is 40 years after he left service in Vietnam. So come on up, Lew. He and I joked that he's going to try to keep this short, but he and I know that he's going to be pushed to keep it short. He's got so much to tell. He's had such an interesting life. So enjoy, Lew, as I know you will. Thanks.
Thank you. No, I've got it. Good morning, everybody, and it certainly is my honor to be back. I know I put many of you to sleep last spring when I talked. So I want to give a little 5 or 6 minute transition from my presentation last spring into today's topic, and we'll get through that pretty quick. I know we've had we're pressed for time, so forgive me if I really fly through some of this stuff pretty quickly. But thank you for being here this morning, and just wonderful to see such a huge crowd. Back in 1967. I got my draft notice in the mail. I was working full-time, going to school at night, not carrying enough credits, and didn't know anybody with political influence. And of course, I got my draft notice and immediately thought about rucksack and a rifle. And I did not want to. I had been working at the airport, washing airplanes, and I had my pilot's license when I was a teenager. So I ran down to the recruiter to try to get into the Air Force, and they rejected me. Said, son, you're too young and you don't have a degree. So I went next door to the Navy thinking I could be a Blue Angel. They said, you got to be joking us. You don't even have a college education. And about that time, this old gunny drill sergeant gets up and comes over to me. He's been giving me the evil eye ever since I walked in. Put his arm around me. Of course, they never do that if you're really in the Corps. Put his arm around me and said, son, you know what you need to do? You need to go next door and talk to the Army. And I said, the Army, they have airplanes? And he said, well, they have these things that fly, and they need a lot of pilots. Well, little did I know back in 1967, it had been published in Aviation Technology and other places, that average life expectancy of an Army helicopter pilot in combat was 19 minutes. They needed a lot of pilots. So I went next door to the Army. I walked in the door and said, hi, I'm Lew. I got a pilot. Sit right down here, son. Are you a high school graduate? And that's all I needed. Lock, stock, barrel, signed in. 20 minutes later, I was going to flight school. As I started to leave, he said, sit down. We got to talk some more. He said, you know, in the Army, you're a soldier before you're a pilot. I said, what's that mean? He said, we're going to send you to basic training in Fort Polk, Louisiana. We're going to make you an 11 Bravo infantry. I said, no. He said, yes. And then we're going to send you to flight school, and if you don't graduate from flight school, guess where you're going with a rucksack and a rifle. Needless to say, I was highly motivated, graduated top of my class, and they allowed me to fly the Army's brand newest helicopter at the time, the AH-1G Cobra, the first helicopter specifically designed as an attack helicopter. Had the pilot in the back seat, the co-pilot in the front seat, completely opposite from the other services. Why did they do that? Because the co-pilot gunner in the front seat, while his job description was gunner, he was really called a bullet catcher because his job was to protect the pilot. And when you did get to Vietnam, you had to fly 3 months in the front seat, and if you lived, you got to be pilot. It had 19-shot rocket pods in this particular case, 7-shot rocket pods. We started out with a 7-pound warhead in the early days, and by the end of my tour, I had 17-pound warheads. What's that mean? That means that each rocket was equivalent of a 105 howitzer cannon round and had a kill radius of 105 meters. Up front, had this turret. There I had an Emerson electric Gatling gun, fired 2,500 rounds per minute. To give you an idea of that, put a bullet in every square foot of a football field in 60 seconds. Next to that was a grenade launcher, fired 350 grenades a minute. Obviously, a mean machine. That's us over the Delta. Initially, I was in the 7th of the 1st Cavalry. As you can see, I'm trying to be Robert Duvall in Apocalypse Now. That's my cat. In this particular case, this is the red team. We flew very high down there because everything was flat terrain. So we stayed above 1,500 feet usually to stay out of small arms fire. I survived 2 months and was promoted to aircraft commander. Boom. I got infused up north up to the DMZ with the 101st Airborne Division. And up there, completely different terrain, completely different tactics. Normally we flew less than 500 feet because the bad guys that are in the jungle, the lower you flew, all they got was a glimpse of you. If you flew high, then they had a long time to get a bead on you. So we used completely different tactics up north. Escorted Hueys, prepped landing zones, and flew pink teams, hunter-killer teams with our favorite guys, the scout pilots. Scout pilots had a different anatomy than the rest of us. Excuse me, girls, but their testicles were bigger than basketball. Because their job was to fly low and slow. Low, I mean less than 10 feet. Slow, I mean less than 30 knots. They were down there to find the bad guys, and then the Cobra, I would do all the map reading, radio communication, and then help them out when they got in trouble. When they did find the bad guys, they had an Emerson electric Gatling gun on the side, and as I would come in and shoot at the enemy, they would come around and come behind me and cover me on the break. So we covered each other all the time in a real tight group. This is the OH-6 helicopter built by Howard Hughes, by the way. There were over 12,000 helicopters in Vietnam. 7,000 Hueys were built by Bell Helicopter, of which 5,035 saw service in Vietnam, accumulating over 9,700,000 flight hours. And while we never figured it out, I would venture to say this aircraft saw more combat than any other aircraft in history. From all 4 services and accumulated that much time, that many helicopters, and doing the things that we did. Of course, we lost a few along the way. That's a CH-54 Sky Crane built by Sikorsky Helicopter. And at the time, they only built about 166 of them or so. We still see them today. We saw them firefighting right here in Riverside County last month. They don't make them anymore. It's a great machine. Anyways, we lost a few helicopters along the way. Out of the 12,000, we lost almost half, 5,035. The little scout helicopter and the guys with the different anatomy, we lost 843 of those. The Cobras that were trying to cover them, by the way, this is the same Cobra that you saw in the opening photo. That was my old Cobra and my buddy Dick Gatto. I felt guilty about this for years. I've been attacking the same enemy on Hamburger Hill for 2 days, sneaking up on them and attacking them from different positions and getting away with it. On the 3rd day, I flew a first flight reconnaissance mission real early, so I was back. Dick took over, went out there, and then tried to attack the guys from the same direction for the 3rd time. Didn't make it. We lost almost 300 of those, and then the Huey was incredible. This is a shot from Hamburger Hill. Out of the 5,035, we lost over 2,300. Pretty intense stuff. Of course, we thought we were invincible, young helicopter pilots back then, but of course, some of us didn't make it. The pilots, we lost 2,460. Along with that, 2,700 of our crewmen. But we always fought for the guys on the ground. They were the ones that really went, that had the misery. And in Vietnam, some people think, well, maybe it wasn't as tough as it was in World War II. In World War II, the greatest generation, wonderful things, saved the world. My dad was part of it. In 4 years, the average combat infantryman saw 40 days of combat, actual combat. In Vietnam, because of the helicopter, we flew them right into combat. So as soon as we found where the bad guys were, they were in combat within minutes. What did that translate to? In 1 year, the average combat infantryman saw 240 days of combat. That is why we ended up with 340,000 wounded, and why the casualty rate in Vietnam was 1 out of 4. So if you had a rucksack and a rifle, you had a damn dangerous job. But we flew them into hell, and we were dedicated to fly them out. In World War II, we did 25 medical evacuations because we didn't have enough helicopters. We had the YF-4 back then, the first one made by Sikorsky. And then we transitioned into Korea. Good old Bill, Larry Bill, built the H-13, the bubble helicopter that we saw on MASH. They conducted over 20,000 medical evacuations in Korea. That cut the rate in half, the death rate from casualties. In World War II, it was 4.5%, cut in half to 2.5% in Korea. In Vietnam, we conducted over 500,000 medical evacuations, over 1 million patients. I know these statistics are mind-boggling, but we reduced the death rate. If we could get people from the combat zone to treatment in less than an hour, which we normally could, and they survived the first 24 hours, death rate plummeted to the best in history, less than 1%. That translated all over the world, and now we have our EMS helicopter system in this country and others, of which a lot of my friends in the Army ended up flying EMS helicopters. So now, especially here in Riverside County and San Bernardino County, where we're spread all over Hell's Half Acre, when we have an accident and we're 50 miles out from the nearest facility, the helicopter can come in and get us, give us en route treatment, get us to a trauma center, and save lives. An incredible system. In the end, 2.6 million men and women participated in the war in Vietnam. 2.6 million over that 15-year period from 1963 to 1976. And of that 2.6 million, we lost 58,165. I was part of the opening of the wall in 1982. I was on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Committee. The only active service member to be on that at the time. I finished my tour in Vietnam, 13 months, 726 combat missions. The senior combat guy in my unit, I was 23 years old. Came back to the States, and they gave me a direct commission. I couldn't believe it. I got a battlefield commission, promoted to first lieutenant. 11 months, 29 days later, I was a captain. Still hadn't graduated from college. Went through 20 years. Last 4 years, I was over here at San Diego, assigned with the Navy. Went 2 years Hayes, Gray, and underway. Have my trusted shellback card, thank you, Navy guys. and probably the only one in history to ever be elected Queen of the Fleet. And one of my dear friends, Roger Martin, stand up, Roger, where are you? I know you're right there. We just recently found each other once again. There's only 4 of us, and still to this day, 4 of us on the East Coast, 4 of us on the West Coast, that go out with the fleet. We handle all the search and rescue operation. We coordinate all the helicopter aviation operations for 3rd and 7th Fleet. A huge job, the toughest job I ever had since combat, but also the most rewarding. Roger relieved me when I finished my tour of duty in Coronado, California. That was 1,000,000 years ago. And I didn't even know he was going to be here this morning. It was just incredible. Thank you, Roger. You know, I didn't have time last time. I wanted to just tell a little story for 5 minutes. I hope I'm doing okay on time. I want to just relate to you the most incredible flying achievement I ever witnessed, at least in my combat duty. And it was done by my dear friend, Mark Stevens. I had finished, this is the headquarters of our squadron, by the way. I had finished the early morning reconnaissance. I'd been up since 4 a.m. I'd flown back, and then I had the rest of the day off. So I left my Huey up on the line. The guys were going to fix it up for me, and I didn't have to rearm it and refuel it myself. They were going to take care of everything. I went back down to my hooch. I built my bunk out of rocket boxes, and I laid down on top of my sleeping bag, and I was going to catch some Z's and think about how I was going to survive through the next day. And I had been laid down for about an hour, and they sent a messenger down from operations. Said, you need to get up to operations right away. It's supposed to be my day off now, because I've already been flying for 6 hours. And I said, man, something bad has happened. Mark Stevens flew in the slick platoon, the Hueys, that carry ash, trash, Bob Hope presidents, body bags, infantry, everybody. He joined me and he says, hey, Lew, I got called up too. Let's get up to operations. We got up to operations. We went in the operations bunker, and that's Mark flying his Hueys. We went into the operations bunker. Sergeant Sanders was in there, and he said, Mr. Jennings, Mr. Stevens, we got a long-range reconnaissance patrol from L Company 75th Rangers. They were actually right next door to us back at home base. These are special forces guys that go out in small 5- and 6-man teams for days on end, all camouflaged, greased up, looking for bad guys. They don't attack them, they just find them so they can relay back, and then the rest of us can do something about it. They said, we got a long-range reconnaissance patrol that are lost. They've been in contact for 6 days. They've got wounded, and they're almost out of ammo. They've been out of food and water for 2 days. Okay, well, we'll go get them. The problem is, they don't know where they're at, and we got to go find them. I said, oh my God. Okay, let's go do that. Problem was, it was monsoon season. It was 26 November 1969, a crappy day. Mark ran out to the flight line. He had been on standby, so his airplane was all ready to go and his crew was already done. My airplane was all ready to go. I grabbed a co-pilot. We jumped in. We were off in 10 minutes. Heading out to the mountainous area towards the Ashaw Valley. Flew in a loose trail formation. I'm loaded to the bear with all those rockets and weapons and bullets and grenades and all that stuff. So I am so heavy that there's no way that I can come to a hover or even slow before 30 miles an hour or I'll just fall out of the sky. So we go around and around in a circle, and we're trying to contact these guys, and their call sign is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Salt 43, my call sign, Salt 43. Coca-Cola, Coca-Cola, Salt 43, nothing. And then Mark says, hey, 2-3, this is 4-3, I'm going to head up into his, I was 2-3, he was 4-3. I'm going to head up into the mountains. I'm going to hover up into the ravines and see if I can find him. You keep calling for him. And I said, you know, I can't cover you because I can't get up there. I can't come to a hover like you can. He says, don't worry about it. We'll just stay in contact. So off he goes. Climbs up into the ravines. We're calling Coca-Cola. We can't get anybody. And he goes from one ravine to the next, and then all of a sudden, I get this call on the radio, a little whisper. Assault! Assault! Coca-Cola! He said, hey, man, good to hear from you. He said, good to hear from you too. Get up here and get us out of here. I said, okay, where are you at? We're on top of a ridge line, we really don't know where we're at. I said, okay. 4-3, can you hear him? And he said, 4-3, and he says, I got it, I'll take over. And Mark's totally calm. He said, guys, just find a ravine and come downhill heading north. I don't care where you're at, just start coming down one of the ravines, especially if you can find a creek, and start heading north. That's exactly what they did, and they started coming down, and he said, let me know when you hear my rotor blades. The Huey was notoriously loud because daggone rotor blades were this wide. Next thing we know, we got you, we can hear you. And Mark says, just keep on coming, I'll find you. And then he radios back to me. And he said, you know, I'm just going from tree to tree looking through the bubble because I'm in the clouds. And he was going up the creek bed. And then he says, okay, I got him. I got him in the creek bed, and they're screaming, we got you, we got you. And he says, Lew, well, he didn't call me Lew. He said, 2-3, I got to pull him up on strings. We had, up in that sector, we had these huge trees in the jungle, so we carried strings. We also carried these ladders, but they were only to put people down and bring people up short distances, and they were heavy too. So we ended up using strings and rappelling. These were 120-foot ropes. And then to get them back out, Sergeant Major Maguire and the Delta Special Forces had designed this rig called the Maguire Ring. And it was just some cargo straps that were fastened to the bottom. And you would put yourself into this, put the cargo strap underneath your butt, and then wrap your hand into an upper cargo strap. We'd jerk you out. That's called a Maguire Ring. Later on, because we had so many people fall out of these, the Special Forces guys designed a stable rig, which was, this is their load-bearing equipment. You can see all the crap that, all the stuff that these guys carry, grenades and ammo and a whole lot of water. But what they did is they put little rings, D-rings and carabiners up there so that when they put their gear together, they had something to hook onto. So when we ran a line down to them, they would either just take a knot or grab a ring and we'd jerk them out there so they could hang on to that. That was good too, but it had no support through your crotch, and you had to hang on to the line because the line was in front of you. And then the Special Forces, the 1st Recon Marines came up with a better design. It's called the Spiece, and it has two D-rings and D-rings in the ropes. And what this does is you can hook on, and it allows you to be jerked out, and your hands are free, handling your weapons. You can hook on your dead, you can hook on your wounded. Nobody's going to fall out, and you all get lifted up at the same time at the elevator. In this case, we're just flying a single Huey, and Mark says, the guy's on the ground, he says, hey, I can only take half the team right now. He says, I only don't any more than 2 or 3 guys get on the rig. And just the previous week, we had one of our helicopters pulled right out of the sky when we were doing a Special Forces extraction, and they were so wanting to get out of the trouble that they all jumped on at the same time. It was too much for the helicopter. So he calls me and he says, okay, I got him on board, and I'm going to pull him out, but I'm in this deep ravine and I'm in the clouds. I'm going to do an instrument takeoff. And he's got granite on both sides. I'm going, oh, you got to be kidding me. And he says, I'm going to come out and just be looking for me. And he says, give me a long count on your radio. We had a little Fox mic radio. I go, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. And what that does, we have an instrument in the aircraft and it signals to where that count is coming from, which was me. And I'm out in the clear. I'm circling around in the valley. So he directs the helicopter there, gets on his instruments, has the guys looking at the guys on the ground, They're attached to the rig, and off he goes, right into the clouds, hoping that he's not going to go left or right and bang himself into the walls of granite. And I'm looking for him. And this is what I see. I don't see anything. I see some guys just swinging across the sky. I can't see the lines. I can't see any helicopter. And I actually published a story about this called Heaven Swing. I saw that and I said, you're clear, come on down. And that's the first time I saw him as he fluttered out of the clouds. We dropped the guys on the ground. And then he went up and did it again. Went through the whole routine, pulled those guys out, got them on the ground, recovered everybody, big thumbs up, everybody was happy, and we got home. And from then on, I mean, I flew with a lot of heroes, but Mark Stevens was really my hero. He received the Distinguished Flying Cross for that operation. Mark Stevens. Now we're to the current. Band of brothers. You know, we were a real close unit. And this is Mike Talton here on the left. He was my co-pilot, and then he became an aircraft commander. He actually just retired last month as a senior executive with Rockwell Collins, and he owns a gun shop. And he was always had this Thompson submachine gun. So wouldn't you know it, he owns a gun shop today. Me and I, that's him. That's how he looks today. Scout pilots, we all take care of each other. That crashed, my crashed Cobra. That's Dick Datto. He's severely injured. I didn't know if he was dead or alive either. We joined up, and here we are, drunk out of our minds down in Mexico at the bar. Crushed the side of his face, lost that eye, but doing great. And some of the other guys. Like you, in your organizations and your military units, and even your companies, you create relationships that are just incredible and that last a lifetime. That was the same with us. And even our boss, our commanding officer. He's 80 years old now. We stay close to him and celebrate his birthday. And then, a couple of years ago, I get a call, and I'm invited to join a clandestine, secret group of old, gray-haired, retired military pilots flying secret missions in Kosovo and Iraq. And I go, holy cow, is that going to be an adventure or what? So I go to my wife and ask her permission, and my kids, and my grandkids, and Grandpa go have his last hurrah, and they just shake our heads. Shake their heads. And off I went. I went out for my interviews and training and all that stuff in Florida, and I came back home and I said, honey, I made it. I'm part of the team. She says, how much are you going to get paid? What kind of life insurance did they give? What happens if you don't come back? I want to know how I'm going to be taken care of. Well, tell me how much you're going to get paid. So, I forgot to ask. I was so excited about the adventure true story. I went to the company, got qualified, and I'm all set up, and I got my orders, and I come home, and I have no idea what I'm going to get paid. Boy, did I get in trouble for that. And here's what I flew. Initially assigned to Kosovo to support the UN, we flew the old, and it's not the O2, we actually took civilian Cessna 337 Skymasters, completely took them apart, rebuilt them from the ground up, extended the wings way out as you see here, and I had endurance of over 10 hours. Off I went to Kosovo, and here's a unique thing. I'm going to be flying in a place I've never been before in my life. I'm going to be flying in the mountains. I'll be flying out of Macedonia, going into Kosovo, doing my thing, coming back, and have not, I'm so afraid of failure that I said, how can I train myself before I get there? Microsoft Flight Simulator. You laugh. Incredible. Pull up the database. I'll be darned. There's Kosovo. There's Serbia. There's Macedonia. There's Greece. There's the whole Balkans. Every airport that has every instrument approach, for a month, I sat there hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times flying every single instrument approach I could find so that I would hit the ground running when I got there. And that really saved my bacon, too. We took the Cessna 337s and we put a whole lot of special equipment on them. I cannot reveal the names of anybody that I flew with. I can't reveal the company that I flew with, and I will not talk about the specific tactics and procedures. That's all still top secret. Here you can see the equipment on the inside. We had Garmin 530s, Garmin 430s, and a whole bunch of special equipment. Single pilot, IFR. My operator flew in the back that did all the communications and operated the camera system. Camera system so sophisticated, flying I can't tell you the altitude. Flying high in the middle of the night. I'm on the border with Serbia. We're looking for bad guys, looking for any, because the NATO forces have been attacked. We're really just watching for trouble. And we see two guys fighting outside a bar. From over a mile up, I can see each drop of blood as it hits the ground. Talk about technology. Holy cow. And then we actually did an STC. We took the standard Skymaster 337 and popped IO 550s front and rear, 3-bladed props. It sounded like a dragster when you started it up. It was a rocket ship for what it was. The problem was it was so loud we couldn't do our mission with it because bad guys could hear us on the ground and know we were there. And that violated our very mission. We had to get in, get out, never heard of, never seen. While I was in Kosovo, I got the call to go to Iraq. And I had finished flying these missions, and I thought I was going to be flying tactical in Iraq, and then they said, Lew, we need somebody to fly all the support missions, all our cargo, move our people, move special forces, go to all our bases throughout Iraq. Are you willing to do that? And I said, absolutely. What kind of equipment am I going to be flying? A Piper Navajo. Well, this Navajo is a Panther. It's got bigger engines, cool looking wingtips, and propellers, at least the tips are down. It was a heck of a machine. The mechanics, though, called it the Never Go instead of Piper Navajo because it was so daggone hard to maintain. And especially in Iraq. I mean, it wasn't a very comfortable place to be. This was my digs as I reported in. And now back to Vietnam. I'm going, boy, this looks different than Vietnam. Let's see. My hooch was made out of tent material and plywoods and screen and stuff. This was my new hooch. They call it a CHU, C-H-U, containerized housing unit. I had one side, my buddy had the other side. And this is what it looked like on the inside. Back to the military, straight, strapped, and looking good. Got my shoes all lined up. Got my chair I bought at the PX. I'm in good shape. And it's air conditioned. I'm saying, man, have I arrived. Sitting at my desk, got my telephone so Ops can call me and alert me when I got a mission. Talking to my wife via Skype on the computer with our own Wi-Fi and high-speed internet. How hot is that? Well, it gets even better. Didn't have that 3-holder we had in Vietnam to go to the bathroom. We had the Cadillac. What's it look like? You actually had real sinks and toilets and a washer and dryer. Porcelain to sit on, privacy with a door. I mean, geez, how does it get any better than that? Well, I think it's even better. You got a washer and dryer. Then I need to go to, I need to go get something to eat. And I said, well, where's the mess tent or the mess hall? He said, God, how ancient is this guy? It's called the DFAC. I said, the DFAC? the dining facility, and it's up on the hill. I go to the dining facility and I go, holy crap, you gotta be kidding. This thing houses 1,000 people at a time, has 8 lines in it with every conceivable thing to eat that you can imagine. Bananas, all kinds of fruit. You want dessert? Baskin and Robbins, every flavor you could dream of and all you can eat. I go, oh man, I'm going to gain so much weight here. I go up to get my breakfast, and instead of the schlock that we had back then, or some sea rations that had been eaten in a 50-gallon drum, here I've got a guy that says, good morning, Mr. Jennings, how would you like your eggs this morning? And after about 2 or 3 visits, they'd even seen me coming, and they already knew what I wanted. One, ham, cheese, onion, and a little jalapeno. Thank you. A little dessert after breakfast. These were hot cinnamon rolls. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute because it became fun. And then, do you know what happens? GIs will always complain about the food. And they leave the dining facility and they go to Taco Bell. We had a Taco Bell and a Pizza Hut right next door. But back to the real mission. Look, my thing buzzed. I'm going to keep going. Back to the real mission. This is what we're faced with day in and day out, called sandstorms. Geez, we don't get those here, do we? Well, all summer long in this part of the world, we get them and they're pretty severe. We get visibility that gets down to 10, 20 meters. This particular airplane that I'm flying is so well equipped, thank you, Mr. Garmin, that I flew 777 missions in 2 years and was only not able to do 2. But I found the airplanes in horrible shape, completely filthy. They had been abused and abused. The guys had been there 6 years. So I jumped on the airplanes, you know, those of us that love to restore airplanes, you see an airplane sitting on a wrap-up, he's even got a flat tire, you want to go strangle somebody. And that's how I felt about these. I said, my God, you got beautiful airplanes and they just have been totally trashed. So I started to work. I said, you know, if nobody else is going to do it, I'll do it. So I cleaned up the airplanes and it became Lew's blue carpet service. And when I got finished, I had a blue carpet to welcome the guys on board. They were all my heroes. I carried mechanics, I carried special forces, special op guys, generals, admirals, anybody and everybody. And so you'd come aboard mine, wipe your feet, please. You don't think I got some comments about that. But then they would come aboard and they'd say, holy crap, this is a whole new airplane. What is this? I said, welcome aboard, have a seat, relax. By the way, you've got a cooler there with fresh drinks. There's some hot coffee thermos in the bottom. There's some hot cinnamon rolls from the mess hall dining facility. And there's even a copy in each seat of today's edition of the Stars and Stripes. And this is in a combat zone. Everybody went nuts. With Garmin aboard, then I could fly off, and we actually had approaches to every single camp throughout Iraq. And in some cases, we even drew our own approaches. And when I would be shooting an approach, by the way, some techniques here, just for a second. I never took off in this kind of weather unless I had a VFR out within 30 miles and other camps. So I was incessantly checking the weather so that if it was covered 100 miles, then I wouldn't go. But most of the time I could go, because I was pretty well equipped. And we had approaches for everywhere, and in some cases we even designed our own approaches to get in and out of some really remote facilities. When we took off, procedure. Throttles full forward, almost always flew at night. Call sign was Wicked 3-3. Took off, there's V1, rotate, pull back, go immediately to VX, get as much altitude as I could before hitting. As soon as I rotated, gear up, lights out. By the time I was at 50 feet, you couldn't see me, totally black. and just at this angle, get up to at least 1,000 feet so we can get shot down. And then when I did approaches in minimum weather, the guy sitting next to me, I'm the only pilot on board usually, guy sitting next to me, whoever he might be, I said, you got to help me out with this approach. I want you to be looking out the window and just look straight down. And you know how we have like 14 different things that are supposed to identify the runway environment when we're on the instrument approach? We didn't have any of those over there. In some cases, we didn't even have lighting. Didn't have stripes, didn't have mouths, didn't have rolls, didn't have poppies, none of that stuff. So I said, as long as you can see the ground, I'm going to continue the approach. So here we go down. And if I got down to NDA and he could not see the ground, then I knew I was in trouble. But as long as he could see the ground, I could continue the approach and find runway. Garmin 430, Garmin 530. This is at Baghdad. I'm the only airplane running in the entire facility at Baghdad International Airport because I was the only one that could get in. After I got in, I was trapped there for 2 days. Remember Mark Stevens? My hero? He emailed me and he said, gosh darn Lew, I heard what you're doing. I want to be there with you. He said, you don't want to be here. He's a multi-millionaire, has a wonderful, successful company, flies a Citation jet, owns Dan, what's airplane now? Baron. He owns a Baron, wonderful guy, great pilot, wants to leave his family and come over there with me. The band of brothers all over again. And I says, you don't want to be here. Well, he says, I do. And I said, send me your resume. I went to the chief pilot. All of us were in our 60s. Our chief pilot was 72, retired colonel in the Air Force. All of us flew every day. There were no slackers, ever. And most of our operators, all senior sergeants and NCOs from the Coast Guard and from the Air Force. Anyways, Mark shows up and we're rejoined 40 years later, this is 2009, in Iraq. And when John, I went to Chief Pilot John, I says, hey, I got a real good friend who wants to fly with us. He's an excellent guy. And he says, well, send me his resume. I said, I'll do better than that. Here's a story I wrote about him years ago called Heaven's Swing. He read the story. Mark was hired the next day. Mark was there 2 years. He flew out of Mosul, real hot spot up north, and became a famous guy in his own right in Iraq. Both of us were there 2 years. While he was there, his son came over with his National Guard unit. He was commander of a medical evacuation company they had an impromptu reunion in Iraq. And then he and I flew together in 2009 when I took him to fly him out of country, catch his jet going back home. And the guys in the back were just saying, geez, all the war stories they're telling up front, they can't be real, can they? This is his ride back home. Ryan loves to fly that. The company disbanded a few years ago. Doesn't do that kind of service anymore. Why? Because we have things that fly without pilots. And they get smaller. This is the MQ-9 Reaper, which is the big brother to the Predator. First time I saw a Predator, I was landing at a place called Camp Spiker. I pulled up to the taxiway to do a 90-degree right turn to go down to the run-up area. And one of those came off the runway and we're sitting there face to face. And I'm just looking, it will terrorize you. I'm looking at that thing and I said, I know there's nobody in there, but it's looking at me. They get smaller and smaller. This is the in situ Scan Eagle. Annika and I have 4 boys. One of our boys is a UAV pilot. And he flew the Scan Eagle for a couple of years. He was one of his great assignments. He was stationed aboard a Navy warship catching the pirates off of Somalia. And now this is what really is going to replace everything. Anybody recognize this? I know it's kind of a blurry picture. It's called the Black Hornet. It weighs half an ounce. It's deployed in Afghanistan with British forces. They have a case that weighs 3.5 pounds, has all their electronics, controllers, and an extra helicopter. And they use it to peek over walls, around corners, and find bad guys before they find them. Can you imagine? Son Robin and I, Robin's an AMPIA. Some of you have seen him around the airport. We're building a glass area down there. I was hoping to do taxi test on Turkey Day, thank goodness. It's been a 9-year effort by us and others. But Robin's here right now. He's the UAV pilot I was talking about. We had a reunion in Iraq when I went into his camp over at the Creek, which was Camp Spiker. And now he's deploying next month. He goes to Italy for a month's training. He's going to fly a UAV about as big as the front part of this room. Requires a runway and all that stuff. He's going to the Congo with the UN. He'll be over there. He's on a 5-year contract. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. I hope I wasn't too long, Pat. But I do, before the question and answer, I do want to reveal a secret. Weapons of mass destruction. You heard a lot about it. A lot of people got in trouble, even my hero Colin Powell. But we did find a WMD. I can't let you see this picture, but more than a moment. Thank you very much.